me one second. There we go. So first thing let's do is let's cover a little agenda of what we're going to go over in today's presentation. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how we can append demographic information at a household level. Then I'm going to build out another workflow showing you how you can append demographics at an aggregated geography level. And then lastly, I want to go over some supporting resources. And then what I want to be able to do is really just talk about what does Alteryx offer for enriching data sets? We mention it a lot, and if you've seen demonstrations before, you see it on our webpage. What does it really mean, enriching data sets for Alteryx? What are some of the data sets that are offered? How is it licensed, etc.? So right now, everyone is on mute, so if you do have any questions, please just type it into the Q&A chat window, and I'll try to get to it either during the call or at the Q&A section at the very end. So let's first talk about some great resources that Alteryx has. Another thing I should mention, as I forgot this slide was here, is we have some other virtual trainings that are coming up. They're every Tuesday at 10 a.m. As you see, we have some more coming up. Here are the Tuesdays, and here are the Thursdays. We also have a ton of them coming up on Thursdays as well. The other thing I want to show you is a great community section that we have. I don't know how many current Alteryx users are currently on the phone, how many people are just evaluating us. But we have this great community that we pushed out recently, let's say a little over a year ago actually now. It's quickly become the #1 resource for our customer base as well as internally inside of our company of how we can ask questions to one another. And so what I thought would be a good idea is actually just open up the community section and show you guys what it looks like. So you go to community.alteryx.com and it opens up a link like this. And what you're able to do here is this can be kind of your first line of defense if you don't know something about Alteryx currently. So if you want to figure out maybe if there's a sort issue you're having. So I can type in over here, custom sort order, for example, I want to figure out some more information about. I go over here, click on that, and here, look, there's a talk bit already about it, and here someone came up with an answer. So this is a great place where you can get some answers to different questions that you may have. It also gives you a great place to give some different ideas that you have for the product. Our products team looks at this community every single day. They're on it answering questions, but as well, they're looking for new ideas to help for future product development. So this is a great place to go to put in some different ideas. And then as well, there's different little discussion sections. If you want to go into discussion about learning about our predictive tools or maybe our preparation tools or data sources, whatever it might be, we have some different discussion sections that are also going on. And then obviously, lots of topics about Inspire because we always want people to come to our great customer conference. So that's a little bit about the community. So it could be a good resource after this as well for about how you can enrich data sets. So before I go into any more slides, what I want to talk about is really what kind of data sets are offered inside of Alteryx that are some of the third-party data sets. So there's 4 different ones that Alteryx can provide for you with different licensing than our typical just base designer. There is a demographic file. So we have the U.S. Census information that you can load in for free. It's located on our website at downloads.alteryx.com, and there should be a link there to be able to download census information. And you're able to then append demographic information from an aggregate geography level. So either it could be a standard geography or a custom geography, and I'm going to show you how you might want to do this in the workflow. Another data set that's offered is some firmographic information. So this file is the Dun & Bradstreet file, and we're not going to actually use it at all in today's workflow, but what I can show you the way that you would access it, and it's going to be very similar to how we access this other data set that we're going to use. But this could be very good information if, let's say, you want to figure out some other business locations around your own, or maybe if, let's say, you're a fast food store. You want to know all the Wendy's in this general trade area. You can figure out that information very easily with a Dun & Bradstreet file. Another file that we have is the TomTom file. What this has is allows you to geocode different addresses. And what that means is you might come in with an address, but you want to turn that address into a point. That's what geocoding is, and the TomTom file could allow you to do that. What it also will allow you to do is to do drive time analysis. So you're going to see in one of the workflows I build out how you can take a point and build a trade area around that. Typically, when you build a trade area, though, it's going to be a straight mile radius. But what's nice about this TomTom file is you can get the drive time trade area around it, which it might be a little more intelligent if, let's say, you are a retailer. People don't care about, oh, it's 8 miles just straight distance away. They might care about, oh, it's within 10 minutes away, rather. And then the last file that we have is the Experian file. And so what this is demographic information like the census file, but also behavioral information. And instead of updated every 10 years, this is updated every year, and it's a lot more richer than the census file. So we're going to use that file extensively today. So I'm going to show you how you're going to access those different files, as well as talk to some of the other files and how you would access those as well, and might be some good use cases of how you might want to use these things. So let's go over the first use case of how I'm going to use one of those files. So the first use case that we have is we're an insurance company, and what we want to do is we want to try to analyze who are our customers and which policies by group are most prevalent. So with the demographic information, behavior information, let's say if we're doing site selection, we want to open up a new store, or we're an insurance company, we want to figure out which policies we have. What we want to do with site selection, let's say, is we understand that X customers are very popular for our store. So we want to open up new locations with very similar customer base, most likely. And what the Experian file can do is it can tell you more than just, oh, this is a young population, this is this. They have hundreds of variables that could help this decision that you're going to make. And one of the most popular variables to use is something called a mosaic segment. So Experian segments the population based on literally 1,000 variables into one of 71 or 72 groups. And inside of those groups, like I said, there's thousands of variables that go into that one group. So it's a pretty accurate description of who your customers might be. So inside of this insurance use case, we're figuring out at a household level what segment each person's in to then figure out which policies different groups are likely to buy. So what we're going to do is first we're going to append a mosaic household code onto each of our customers. Then also we're going to do some data prep type of stuff. We're going to figure out the average duration for the policy is held by households in month to determine the top 10 policies by each mosaic segment. Then for each of the top policies, we also want to calculate the average duration in months that the policy has been held. So what are some of the key concepts we're going to learn inside of this first use case? And I'm going to go over to Alteryx very soon, I promise. What we're going to learn is what is Calgary, what's a Calgary join, what's a Calgary input, what's housed inside of there. You'll see in a little bit, I'll go into that. What's this consumer view data? I mentioned it a little bit before, but we have a wonderful macro, and you're going to see this. But one of the most important things is, hey, we're going to get out these mosaic segments, and we'll go in depth and learn about the different mosaic segments. We're also going to learn about a really cool tool called allocate. And what's an allocate append? How we're able to basically determine demographic and behavioral information at an aggregated geography level. And then lastly, we're going to use some drive time analysis using the TomTom file as well. So those are the key concepts that hopefully we're going to learn today. So let's go over to Alteryx now. Let me close out of this. And so if any of you have previously gone to some of these webinars, they've mostly been follow along. So you guys have been sent either files, or they just tell you, hey, you bring out this data set, we're going to use these tools, etc. You can definitely attempt to do that in this webinar, but the problem is most of you, I assume, do not have the data files. So you will have all the same tools that I have, but if you don't have the relevant data, you're going to either get a couple of errors or you're just going to get different results. So you can definitely attempt to build this out, but it's not going to be exactly the same. So the first use case that we're going to do is we're going to do that insurance analysis. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to bring in my customer file and see what it looks like. So I'll use an input data tool. And I'm going to go navigate to the file. And I'm going to have to go search for it for a minute because I set this up a full week ago. So just wait one moment. There we go. Virtual training, data, customers, match file. Perfect. Okay, so we have our data set. And what you're seeing is we have some member ID, the name of that member, our address, city, state, and zip field. So I'm going to show you the tool we're going to use to be able to append these mosaic segments onto each of these customers, because that's my first goal, is append the mosaic segment as well as other demographic variables to each of these customers at the household level. So I'll show you the tool we're going to use. So you're going to go into your join section, and if you have the data set, you will see that you have a consumer view matching file, macro. If you do not have the data set, you will not have this little tool. And let me drag this in. And what it's going to do is it's going to use this Experian consumer view matching or is consumer view file, and it's a macro. So it's going to basically, I'll show you how you configure it first. First, you're going to say that, hey, we want to match our individuals based off the address. So you place in your address, city, state, and zip file. What this is going to do is it's going to run through that consumer view file and query it and see where, oh, we have matches for address, city, state, and zip, and then it's going to populate the results. But what might be more accurate is to also provide it name and phone number information. I have a name field, but look, it says first name and last name, and I only have it as a full name if you look at our data set over here. So what I'm going to need to do is break that out into two different parts with a first name and a last name. So let me go and do that. I want to remove this tool right now. I'm going to go to my text to columns tool. And what I'm going to do is I want to split my name field into two different fields based off of a space. So \S, that means space, and I want to split it into two different fields. Let me hit run. And what you're able to see on the output side of this is we have first name and last name. Let me clean that up a little bit and remove that full name field. So I'm going to go back into here and use the select tool. The select tool now will allow me to deselect that name field and to rename name1 into first name and name2 into last name. I want to hit run one more time to view that this was built correctly. And that's exactly what I see. We have our address, city, state, zip, first name, last name. We no longer have full name. So I'm going to use this consumer view matching macro to match our customer data to this Experian consumer view file. But like I mentioned before, is that this is a macro. What that means is there's a lot of tools that goes on underneath it. So let me show you this. What it really is lots of different Calgary files it's hitting up against at many different levels. So what that means is, so Calgary, and I mentioned we're going to talk about this in the PowerPoint. I guess this is a good time to talk about now. Calgary is our internal database that allows you to query data very quickly. So if you have a large file like this consumer view file is, or individual file is, or the TomTom file is, it makes sense to load it inside of here for quicker querying of the data. The way that you might use it is you might, let's say, join what you have against this and query the database and return the results. The way you would set this up is you say Calgary data file. So you choose which file you want to query. So as you see here, since I have the full data set, I have the DMB file, I have the Experian household and individual file, traffic count file, as well as TomTom information as well. So what I can do is I can then say I'm going to match our customer file against the Experian household information. And let it just load up for a second. And it's going to show me then all the different fields that I have, and I choose which fields I want to query against. So I say first name should match with first name, last name should match with last name, address should match with the address field, city match with city, state, and zip. But what's going to happen is there's going to be multiple different layers that we need to match to. While this is loading, I just saw that there's a question, and there's a question is, what if you have a junior in the name but do not know it ahead of time? That's a very good question. So using this text to columns, as you saw, it's going to just split it into two different things because I know in this data set there's no juniors, there's no middle names inside of there. You would really want to clean it up a little bit more than what I'm doing right here. But with a junior, it should be okay with having that appended to the last name, because I'm going to show you how it actually tries to match it. And for some reason, this is not really liking me too much, and it's giving me, if you guys, Alteryx is not responding a little part. Lovely. So the D side is going to show us all 100 plus variables, so for all of our different individuals that match all the different variables. But let's look at the report first to talk about that kind of waterfall approach. So inside of this tool, which you can totally open up and look at what goes into it if you would like to. But first, as you see, it tries to match at this level called R. And what is that level? It means that it tried to match at full name and the address. It was able to match 104 of our records, which is 45% of them, or 47.5% of them. And so this is pretty good. But for the ones that didn't match on the full name and address, it then goes to this next level, which is S. So then it goes for last name and address, which matched another 20, which is another 9% of our data. Then let's just strip off the full name. It goes to address only, 83, which is 37%. And then we had 12 that were unmatched as well. So you can totally build this out with just the Calgary join tool if you would like. But what's nicer is it's already built out, so you don't have to do it over and over again. And I mentioned the Dun & Bradstreet file before. It can be used for firmographic information. This is Experian, so this is for demographic information. But we have the exact same tool built out in a similar approach with lots of Calgary joins built underneath the hood. But let's look at the data side for this Calgary output. One thing is, if you remember, we only gave it a few fields. But look now, we have 144 fields. And let me just walk you through a few of these. So one is, the macro gave us a record ID, so it's just the order that passed through. This is our member ID that we initially started with, our address we started with, city, state, and zip that we did. Now this is some information that we didn't have before. So this is that matching level. So this matched on the full name and address, as you can see, so it was an R. The address only was a T, if you remember that coding from before. But okay, it went through this thing called CAS, which allows us to standardize the addresses and clean them up if there's any misspellings or if it misspells street or makes it ST, for example. What are some other things that pops out? It gives us a person ID number, person type, the full name that's together. So this is the individual file. It gives us the gender of the individual, their combined age, their educational model, marital status, occupation group. Some other information that could be handy is number of people that are living inside the house. And now, so that was all the the individual information. Over now to the right is going to be all of our household information. So you're going to see many of the same data points, but now we're going to have some extra ones that could be interesting. So let me move over a little bit further. So one, we have a phone, special usage phone, so we could have some phone numbers inside of there. Dwelling unit size, the dwelling type, are they a homeowner or not? Are they a mail responder? So this could be very useful if you're a marketer and you want to know, should we even send them a mailer or not? Do they respond yes or no, or unknown? How long have they lived in their residence? Number of people living there, number of adults living there. Obviously, the residual is number of kids living there. When's the last time they moved there, or their activity date, so maybe they got a new mortgage, whatever it might be. And then if I keep on scrolling over to the right, what I want to pop out now is that Mosaic household code. And you will see that right over here. So here's the Mosaic household. So this individual, or this household, is an O51. Yet over here is the Mosaic zip 4. So that means the zip, basically the people generally around this household is a K40. So it means that they're not exactly the same as their population around. What we want to know more is what is the household composition of all these different individuals, and see if that has some indication of buying different insurance packages, pretty much. The other thing I want to show you outside of here is, as you see, there's just so many fields that we can go into. There's over 140. As you can see, there's a spatial object over here. What this is it means that it geocoded that address. Since it's in this green italicized, that means you can view it on a map. So we not only figured out demographic and behavioral information about those individuals, but we also have a point. So I can go over to this map tab, and what you're going to see is we can map all of those 207 individuals onto a map. If you want to turn this into a report or do spatial analysis with these individuals as well. I just got another question, another very, very logical question. Is there some reference file that describes each of those fields? Because that is, first time I looked at this thing, I had no idea what it was either. Yes, we have a great little Excel sheet that explains all the different variables, what they mean, what the 3 means as compared to a 2 or a 0, etc., and what the codes mean as well. Yes, we have a file that we ship out when we ship out the data to you. So I wanted to show you that and go kind of into all those different fields just to show you what is available from just this consumer view matching file and how easy it is to really use that data set. The only thing that I actually care about, though, is really only the Mosaic household field. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring a select tool in, and I'm going to deselect all those excess fields. So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect all my fields and add back in my member ID, first name, last name, and then the other things I'm going to keep are the Mosaic household. So let me scroll down here. Mosaic household field right over here. What I should see now is we removed actually some of the earlier fields that we had. And what we're going to have is now just those 4 different fields, I believe. Yep, member ID, first name, last name, Mosaic household. I might want to change this first name and last name to, instead of not applicable, address only, to really our full name that possibly they provided over there. So let me do that. Perfect. Now, this data set is set up. That's all we needed. We had our original customer file, and now we figured out the Mosaic segments of all those different individuals. So now what I want to do is I want to bring in my second data set. And what that data set is, we understand which customers bought which products. So what I'm going to do is bring in an input data tool, hit the drop-down menu, and I'll go to now that other data set called customers products. And let's look at it. We have our member IDs over here. When did they start buying their product? What type of group are they in? So are they auto, home, or life insurance? What type of policy is it? And are they self, or is it a child or a spouse for the type of policy coverage? If you look at this, though, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the different date types. I mentioned before that we want to do some sort of date calculations later to figure out the duration that each of these individuals have held this policy for. So what I need to do is I need to make sure that this is in the correct date format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to my date time tool, drag this into the canvas, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this from start date. So what does our original data type look like? Look at it over here. It's like it's year, 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 slash month, month, slash day, day, day. But that's a string. I just know that by default. So I go over here and I say, I want to change the string to a date time field. So I want to go into that. It's going to come out date timeout. So let me hit run to make sure that worked properly. As you can see, we now have it in this date time format. It looks exactly the same, but if I bring in a select tool, you're going to see that one is a string and one is actually a date. See, this one's a string, this one's a date. And to do a date time calculation, we need it to be in this date format. So I'll just rename this one. The next thing I want to do is I want to figure out from this date timeout, which is really the start date, what's the difference, or how long has everyone held their policy for? And so this is when they started, and let's just say they all kept it to today. So what I'm going to do is determine the difference between today and this date timeout field. So I'll bring in a formula tool to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a new field called duration. And it's going to be a number type. And then what I'm going to do is go to my functions tab and go to a date time type and go to the difference. And what I'm doing is I'm determining the difference between the date time now and date time 2. And date time 2 is our current field that is start date. And what I want to get is the difference in months. Close that up, and let me hit run to see if that calculated properly. And as you see over here, we have our different duration in months. Looks perfect to me. Now what I need to do is I need to figure out, since, like I mentioned, the goal is to, before, determine, which mosaic segments are popular among each of the different groups and the policy types, I need to join these two different data sets together based off the member ID. So I have member ID over here and member ID over here. So let me go over here to a join tool, connect one data set to the left-hand side, the other one to the right-hand side. And I'm going to go to this and say member ID should match with member ID. On this output, there's going to be some excess fields. So we don't need this member ID to populate twice. We don't really need the full name. What we actually just need is a group, the policy coverage, and then the start date we can keep if we want to. We don't really actually need it, though. We just need the duration. So I'm going to hit run one more time to make sure that populated properly. So nothing came out the left. A few came out the right, and that's okay. But we have our join results coming out the J over here. And what I want to do now is I need to just aggregate my data like I mentioned before. So what we need to figure out is by group, by policy, by mosaic household type, what's the average duration, how long have they kept it in months, as well as what's the count of the different policies. So let me go to my transform category, go to a summarize tool, bring it into the join category. And what I want to do now is I want to group based off of this group category, so you can see it over here. So we'll do a group based off of that, a group based off the policy, a group based off the mosaic segment. I'll count, and I'll get the average duration as well. Let me hit run, and let's go through that. What you're able to see now is we have our different groups, our policy types for each of the different mosaic segments, the counts of those, and the average duration of each. As you can see, it just went in order over here. So we have 215 different distinct variables, and that's what I was expecting. So my goal is, instead of having all these 215, I want to get the top 10 for each group. So what I need to do is I need to sort my data properly. So I need to sort it based off of the group and based off of the count descendingly. So let me sort my data. Let me bring it in over here. If I want to grab the top 10, let me grab the group. Let me do that ascendingly, so it's just easy for me to visually see. But more importantly, let's do the count descendingly. Really, this group doesn't matter to do it ascendingly. It's just for easier viewing in the browse tool to see everything in order. And what we see now is for every single type, we have now our different ones sorted descendingly by the different counts. So L42, for example, is number 1 for the auto type for comprehensive coverage. And then we have our different ones for the home, different ones for life, etc. So now the only thing I need to do is pull out the top 10 for each group. So I go to my sample tool. What I want to do is simply say, I want the first 10 records for each group. And then after this, let me just view my results by bringing in a browse tool. And I'll hit run now. So if you look at it over here, what we'll see is we have 10 records for each group. And so what we're seeing is the L42s, first of all, they're very prevalent inside of our are types. As you see, there's many different times this mosaic household type is coming up, very popular inside the auto groups, as well as the O42 is popular. But you also see the L42 over here in the home a couple times, as well in the life insurance. So the L42, whatever that mosaic segment is, like I mentioned, you can get the descriptions of what they are. They're very popular insurance types. Like I mentioned also before, another use case is site selection. What I might see is, our grocery stores, this type of grocery store, or this type of product inside of a grocery store does well in these markets to these types of customers. So maybe we should, market to those types of individuals in different locations, or we should open up new locations because we have a lot of people inside that mosaic segment, inside of that population we currently don't serve. So hopefully this makes sense. I think everyone gets a completed workflow of this if they want to after this webinar. But this is the first one I wanted to go over of how you can append demographic information at a household level. I'm going to go over the aggregate level and the TomTom file after this. But does anyone have any questions of what I've shown so far? Okay, that's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just disable these tools, and I'm going to keep it all inside the same canvas. So I'll just put these tools in a tool container, and I'll disable it. So now what I want to do is it's going to be a second use case. I don't want to go back to PowerPoint. I like staying to Alteryx more. What I want to do is I want to put a point onto a map. I want to build a trade area around it, a drive time trade area, and figure out some different demographic and behavioral information within that trade area. So this could work for an individual point you place on a map. It could also work if you bring in a large file and you need to then turn those points, those addresses into points, into trade areas. It would work all the same way. It's going to be the exact same general steps. What I'm going to do, though, and everyone should have all of these tools to be able to do most of this workflow, is I'm first going to bring in a map input tool. The reason I'm going to do this is just to create a point. So we'll go over to, let's go towards my location. I'm sitting over here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's loading for just a second. There's Cambridge, perfect. Let's figure out people similar or around my location. Cambridge, MA. That's what I'm calling this little point over here. Okay, I create a point on map. You can create multiple points if you want to do that. What I want to do next is I want to build a trade area around this point. So I'm going to go to my spatial section, and I want to go to my trade area tool and bring that guy in. What you state is, what field are you going to build the trade area off of? Some people, let's say if you bring in a data set that already has a point, it might not be called spatial object. Inside of Alteryx, this point is called spatial object, though. It could be called point, could be called centroid. The only thing you're doing here is saying, what field are we going to build that trade area around? I'm then stating that I want to include that individual point in my output. Then over here, you specify the value that you want to build your trade area off of. So right now, it's set at 5, and if you look at the units, it's in miles. So what this would be is a 5-mile trade area. And I'll just show you what that would look like really quickly. What you're able to do with this trade area, though, is you can edit it in any way you want to. As you see, this is a straight mile radius. And if I think about this, this is not very intelligent because I can get to over here in Belmont way quicker than I can ever get to the south side of Boston. Like, the drive time analysis would be so much more intelligent in this type of analysis. You can also build multiple trade areas around the same point. So if you want to do a donut effect, let's say, you can do a 12 and a 5, or you can do even more than that. So let me just run that and show you what that looks like. As you see, we built 2 points over here, this 12-mile and this 5-mile radius as well. But let's go down to the units. Let's look. We got kilometers. Now we don't want kilometers. We're over in the U.S. We want some drive times in minutes. This is where that drive time file could come in handy. So what I'm going to do is let's build a 5-minute drive time trade area. What's even cooler is we can do this off of different data sets. So it could be off of peak times, night times, or off-peak times. In Boston, it's almost always peak, I feel like. So I'm going to choose peak to see how little far I can go pretty much in 5 minutes. I assume this is going to be a very small trade area. Yes, it is. It's a very small trade area, as you see, right around. That's Harvard Square over there. MIT's down over there. Can't get very far in 5 minutes. If I change this, let's say, from peak to off-peak, the radius is obviously going to increase in size some. Very cool analysis. You can get over the river now if it's off-peak times in 5 minutes. I think this is very interesting to show you how even this is built off of, right now we're not around any highways. But if I was around a highway, you would be able to see that I'm able to get a lot further on a highway than local roads. And that's because this drive time trade area is really based off of the road network. And it is updated all the time. So it's very, very informative, I feel like. But we're not just building a trade area to build a trade area. You can do many different types of analysis with trade areas and points, maybe finding the intersection of customers within these trade areas or individuals within these trade areas, or maybe do a gap analysis. So what areas aren't covered by our different groups. But what I want to do, again, is I want to enrich this data. I want to figure out demographic and behavioral information around this trade area. So what I'm going to do is go over to my demographic analysis section, and I'm going to bring in an allocate append tool. So what allocate is in general is a way to allocate or really aggregate data up to a geography level. So it has the same data sets as the census, as the Experian file. It has as well as some of the other data sets as well. But what we're going to use is actually going to be the Experian data set again, but it even offers more variables than just that consumer view file that we looked at before. So I'll go to my allocate append tool. And the way you set this up is you state, I want to use which data set, so the Experian file, and what are my records like? Are they custom geographies? Are they really coming in as states and I just want to match Massachusetts to Massachusetts, let's say, or whatever it might be. But I want to use a custom geography, and what I want to do is I want to append demographics to not my spatial object, because that's a point and that wouldn't work, but rather a trade area. And what variables do I want outside of that? What I want to get is, let's figure out some basic variables. As you see, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of variables. I want to get the total population within this area. If you want to break it down by age, you could totally do that as well, to like age under 4, buck 21, etc. I just want to get the total population. Some other things that we have is income by age of head of household, the mosaic segment within this custom trade area rather than at the household level, the occupation types and the employment types around this area, the retail demand, as well as the SIM and product profiles. So what do people most often watch on TV? What do they most often buy? So let me go to this retail demand and show you some of the different things. So we can get the total retail demand in this area, which I'm guessing is going to be pretty high. You can also do it by store type. So for sporting goods, what is the total retail demand for this area? So now I can go and hit run. What you're able to see now is we appended on these different values over here. So it comes out as these codes, so CY, A01, V001, and that's 76,000. Then we have something over here that's 604,000, or is that 6 million? And then over here, total retail, I think, for sports is even more than that. Okay. These codes are even more confusing than the codes you saw in the Experian view file. There's a couple different ways you can kind of change those to be a little more intelligent. I'll just show you the easiest way, but the least dynamic way. Just know there are more dynamic ways to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a select tool. And what you can see inside the select tool is, you see, oh, look over here. We have what those different descriptions are. So inside this rename category, I can just change this to total pop. I can change this to retail demand sports for sporting stores. And this is total retail demand. Oops, if I can spell it correctly, demand. If I hit run, it might be a little bit easier to look at. Scroll over here to the right. Our total population is this. Retail for sports is really high, and our total retail demand is insanely high inside of this trade area. But let's now change this from a 5-minute drive time for off-peak to back to that peak time over here. And that's really going to decrease in size, I'm guessing, because our trade area changed. Look, our population dropped by a lot. Retail demand dropped by 4 million. And our total retail demand dropped by a lot. I forgot to count what it was before. And so this is a very, very easy way, as you can see, to append. There's hundreds and hundreds of variables inside of here, inside of retail demand, Simmons product profiles, etc. So if you want to learn about, number of households that have taken any trip in the past year, past month, maybe to Switzerland or to Spain, you can get all of this great information that's provided from the Experian file. If you wanted instead to do it, to not append it to a custom geography, but just start with a standard geography, you can use an allocate input tool. So let me drag that in and show you how this works. What you can do is say, okay, let's use the Experian file again. What I want to do is pull out for the DMAs, or let's say the counties, or the block groups, or the zip codes, whatever we want to choose. Let's choose DMAs by state. So what I want to do is I want to pull out all the DMAs inside of Massachusetts. What I then want to do is figure out, again, the retail demands, let's say. And then with the special fields is I want to return a spatial object, so I'm able to map that. So this is a way that you can then take, instead of using a custom geography like we do here, just take a standard geography. We have our 4 different DMAs over here, the keys, the total retail demand, and then their polygons as well for the different DMAs, as you can see. So are there questions about this section over here about how you append information, this allocate append, and how it could be useful for enriching your data sets? Yes, there is. There's a good question over here about how accurate is the sports retail demand, was the ultimate source of it. So all these data sources are really not coming from Alteryx. We're just repurposing them because we know it could be very valuable for our customers. They're really coming from Experian that we license, that we then license to you guys. So I assume Experians are very accurate, but we could always do some spot testing with you guys to determine how accurate it is and what the ultimate source is. Honestly, I'm not sure the source of this individual field. I know, for example, the Simmons product profiles is based off of survey data. So you have to rely on then survey data, and I trust Experian for the most part. It's going to be pretty accurate, but it's obviously not going to be 100% if it's based off of surveys. For the retail demand, I'm not sure 100% where they get that data from. But if you have any questions, please reach out to us, and we can get you in touch with the people that would. Are there other questions about this allocate append and how you can append demographics? So hopefully what you saw is high level, what is Calgary, how it's used, and how we built these beautiful macros so you don't even have to truly go through the work of building out different Calgary joins to do a waterfall process to try to batch at different levels for household or for business information. Also, we went through this consumer view matching file and see how easy it is to use to figure out the mosaic segments, as well as over 140 other variables about these individuals or at the household level, how you can append demographic and behavior information to a standard or custom geography, as well as how you can use the TomTom drive time file. We just use it in a drive time trade area, but let's say if you want to find the distance of 2 points, you can do it in that way as well, and you can do it in a couple different varieties. So some other supporting resources that I want to give you guys is, like I showed you before, the community. The community is a great place to learn more about the product and to get help using the product. So community.alteryx.com. We also have some training resources online that talks about how you can enrich your data sets, as well as just learn about other processes inside of Alteryx. So you can go to alteryx.com/product training. As well, if you do need technical support, I'm sure if you're a current Alteryx customer, you're already best friends with our client services team. They're amazing. But email them at clientservices@alteryx.com. They have a live chat. They have a phone number as well. So at the end of this webinar, you will be given a survey. Please fill it out. It helps me improve, helps our team improve how we should build these webinars in the future. So we really value your input. And with that, thank you all for coming, and please type in any questions that you do have in the Q&A chat window. If there's nothing else, have a great rest of your day.